Hi guys, welcome back to the Sun Devil Learning Lab. This is the third grade English team. I'm Miss Martinez. Today I am not feeling too well, and so I just need you to bear with me through today's lesson. We can do this. It's going to be fun. So it's called Let's Make Connections. So our standards today are recognize and make connections in narratives, poetry, and drama to other texts, ideas, cultural perspectives, personal events, and situations, and also choosing books based on personal preferences. So our objective is I can make connections between texts and ideas to comprehend what I read. So today it's just going to be all about you and how that you make connections when you read. So our agenda is we're going to introduce the different types of connections that we typically use when we're reading. We're going to have a read aloud where I am going to kind of show you how I connect to a text, and you can also follow along and do that. And at the end, we are going to do a bingo, which is going to be super fun, and I'm so excited for us to try that out online. So text to self. So text to self is just focusing on how you make connections to the story. What does the story remind you of? How can you relate to the characters in the story? Does anything in the story remind you of anything in real life? And it's just a way that you can personally connect to the reading that you're reading. And it's through like your own experiences in life, or an event that happened in your life, something that reminds you of something like that. Or even like if the character's favorite color is blue and yours is blue. It's kind of like that. So that's text to self. Text to text is focusing on text to text connections. So what does this remind you of in another book you have read? How is it similar to something that you read? Or how is this text different from other things you have read? So again, just because you're reading one book doesn't mean you can't relate it to another. So fairy tales, how they're all similar with princesses and princes and all that kind of stuff right there. So that's text to text. Text to world. So what does it remind you of in the real world? What events are going on in the world that you can connect to the book? How are events in the story similar to things that happen in real life? And it's just a larger connection that a reader brings to a reading situation. So we learn about a lot of different things through television, movies, magazines, and newspapers. And it's just a way to enhance your learning in science, social studies, and literature. It connects all of those subjects into English. So here's some posters that you can check over. If you want, go ahead and take your time and pause the video and write them down. And so we have text to self. It reminds me of the time. You can use those words to prompt you to make a connection. Text to text, it reminds me of this book. In text to world, this event was like the real event. Okay, so we're going to play bingo after I do a short read aloud. I might read the whole book, I might not. It just depends on how much time we have left. I think I go over right here. Oh, sorry, some technical difficulties. Let me go back to sharing my screen. Okay, so there's that. I'm going to go ahead. Since I can't figure that out, let me see. I'm going to try it one more time. Oh, perfect. Okay, hopefully you can see me right here. So, The Giant Jam Sandwich, story and pictures by John Vernon Lord with verses by Janet Burway. So, The Giant Jam Sandwich, right away, it shows this kind of scenery. And it kind of reminds me of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, that book. It's so text to text connection right here. Just because The Giant Jam Sandwich, it reminds me of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, where a bunch of larger foods are coming from the sky. That kind of reminds me of that. So that's a text to text connection. And the publisher is Hot Mifflin Company, Boston. One hot summer, an itching dawn, 4 million wasps flew into town. Okay. So can you make a text-to-text, text-to-self, or text-to-world connection? I can kind of relate. So I'm going to do a text-to-self and say that when I lived in Texas, we would often have a bunch of bugs that just swarm you at night. That kind of reminds me of that. They drove the picnickers away. They chased the farmers from their hay. They stung Lord Swell on his fat, bald pat. They dived and hummed and buzzed and ate. So, sorry, it's a little dark. Text to self reminds me of whenever I picnic, oftentimes you have to like swat away the bugs and everything like that. And sometimes you have to just pack everything up and leave, like when ants start coming towards your picnic and bothering you like that. So that's a text to self. And the noisy, nasty nuance grew till the villagers cried, "What can we do?" So they called a meeting in the village hall, and Mayor Muddleton asked them all, "What can we do?" And they said, "Good question," but nobody had a good suggestion. So does that remind you of anything in real life? Text to world, when they meet in the village hall, it's just like a town hall meeting. Let's see, doing everything that they could right here. Do you have any text to self, text to text, or text to world connections? Okay, then Bap the baker leaped to his feet and cried, "What do wasps like to eat?" "Strawberry jam." "Now wait a minute. If we made a giant sandwich, we can trap them in it." The gentleman cheered, the ladies squealed, and the farmer said, "Use my field." So they're problem solving to make a better world without the wasps. So any text to text, text to self, or text to world connections right there? Again, this reminds me, text to text reminds me of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, making a huge, giant food item. So here's this page. Bap gave instructions for making the dough. Mix flour from above and yeast from below. Salt from the seaside, water from the spout. Now thump, bump, and bang it about. While they're working and working hard, some made more tablecloth out in the yard. So they're working together to make this giant sandwich for the wasps. When they were done, the dough was left to rise, so the loaf was a mountain in shape and size. They hitched it up with a bit of fuss to tractors, cars, and village bus, and took it to the oven they made in the hill, 50 cookers and an old brick mill. So when I see this image of this big loaf right here, text to world, that kind of reminds me of the Guinness World Records, where they would try to make their biggest food item possible. You would often see how long it would take them or how big the items would get. Oftentimes people would try to make the biggest pizza in the world, and they would have people help out. So that's my text to world connection. For hours and hours they let it cook. It swelled inside till the windows shook. It was piping hot when they took it out, and the villagers raised a mighty shout. "Isn't it crusty? Aren't we clever?" But the wasps were just as bad as ever. All right. And let's see how much time we have. Okay, we have a couple minutes. The loaf was left to cool, and the people watched while 6 strong men took a big saw and sliced right through it. Everybody clapped, and they cut slices by 2. All right. It's them cutting it. Any text to self, text to world, text to text connections right there. The village best they all agreed would spoil the field of farmer seed. So 8 fine horses pulled the bread to where the picnic cloth was spread. So any text to world, text to self connections right there. I think text to, let's see, just kind of reminds me of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs throughout the whole text. They would use different objects to help them move it across town and stuff like that. So that's my text-to-text connection. A truck drew up and dumped out butter, and then they spread it with a flap and a flutter. Spoons and spades slap and slam, and they did the same with strawberry jam. So here's the text-to-self connection. I can relate to this text by they use strawberry jam, and that's actually my favorite. And dumping out butter, when I was younger and I would have tea parties with my mom, we would have butter and strawberry jam sandwiches. So that's something that I can relate to the text. And that's something that I can use later on if there is a test to remember what is on the test. So if it asks a question like what kind of jam sandwich it was, I can remember that text-to-text connection that strawberry and butter were used on the sandwich. So, all right, so we're running a little bit out of time. So we're done with that book. It was the giant jam sandwich. And I'm going to go ahead and put my screen back on to the slides. So something to note is that text to world, self, and text connections are great to have around, so that way when you relate to the text, it has more an impact on you. So later on when you take a test, you can relate to it. So often whenever I'm reading a text, and what helps me is I relate to the text, no matter if it's text to self, text to world, or text to text. So like I said, I related to the jam sandwich and said it out loud. You can even write it down, your connection. So I am going to remember that the jam sandwich had butter and strawberries because I connected it to the tea parties that I used to have when I was younger. So that's something to know. That's a reason why it's super important to learn connections. So now let's play bingo. So what I'm going to have you do is go get a pencil, a piece of paper, and you are going to make a bingo board this size. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pieces. So 3 down and 3 across, and that's how we're going to play bingo. So go ahead and pause this video if you need time to copy it down like this. What is going to be inside of each square? To make it smaller, you can say TTT, TTS, or TTW. Or you can write out completely text to text, text to self, text to world, and make sure that you have at least one of each. The other ones are going to be your choice. So make sure that you have all 3 no matter what, and then fill up the rest with whatever you want. And how this is going to work is that either I'm going to tell you the word text to text, or I'm going to tell you text to text, and you're going to have to explain it out loud, and then you can get to mark out that spot if you get it correct. Or I'm going to give you the definition, and you're going to have to find it before we shout it out. So make sure that you're following the rules and playing fairly, and let's go ahead and get started. If not, pause the video. Okay, first one. So readers connect their story to another story they read. Is that text to self, text to text, or text to world? Go ahead and shout it out if you know the answer. And the answer is text to text. Awesome. So I hope you guys got that. If you did, go ahead and cross that off. That is one of the spaces that you are filling. So readers connect their story to another story that they read. What is that? Again, that is text to text. So far you have 2 text to text, and I hope that you're answering them without letting the video go forward, and make sure that you're trying your hardest. It's okay if you don't get them all right. Okay, so next we have text to world. What is it? Explain it. How would you define it? Or remember those sentence starters that we use? What is a sentence starter that you can use for text to world? Go ahead and pause the video and shout it out. All right, hopefully you shouted it out, and we are going to move forward. So text to world, this is just one definition, but I'm going to go ahead and break it down after this. So The larger connections that a reader brings to a reading situation. We all have ideas about how the world works that goes beyond our personal experiences. We learn about things through television, movies, magazines, and newspapers. Often, it is text-to-world connections that teachers are trying to enhance when they teach lessons in science, social studies, and literature. So that's a little bit of a long definition, but text-to-world is connecting to the outside world. So you could say when you're doing text-to-world, this reminds me of this event that happened. This reminds me of this situation in the world. You can talk about the news that it connects to, any past events, any moment in history that it reminds you of. That is text to world when it's the overall about the world and it's true. So text to world. Hopefully you guys got that one. That one is a little bit difficult sometimes. So I highly recommend going back and reviewing that one. Okay. So what does it mean when you relate text to yourself? So text to self, what does it mean? What are you doing when it's text to self? Go ahead and pause the video and shout it out. Text to self. All right, let's move forward. Text to self, it's highly personal connections that a reader makes between a piece of reading material and a reader's own experiences or life. So text to self, like I was saying. So remember, I used the example that I did tea parties when I was younger, and that reminds me of this story. So text to self, how do you personally relate to the story? What happened in your life that you can relate to the story, similar experiences, anything that you can relate to the characters, if they are going through a hard time, how did you relate to that? So it's anything relating to you personally that you can connect. So let's move forward. Has anybody gotten a bingo yet? Go ahead and shout it out. If you have, yay. If not, keep trying. We can always try for filling the whole board if you already got a bingo. So highly personal connections is, what kind is it? Text to world, text to text, or text to self? Go ahead and pause the video. If not, it is text to self. So highly personal connections, personal about you. How do you relate to the text? Readers connect their story to another story that they read. What is the answer to that? Readers connect their story to another story that they read. Is that text to world, text to self, or text to text? Go ahead and shout it out. And the answer is text to text. Awesome. All right, text to world. What is the definition to text to world? Go ahead and shout it out. Can take a while because it is a pretty long definition. But text to world, if you got this correct, go ahead and mark it off. It's the larger connections that a reader brings to a reading situation. So it's ideas about the world, and it goes beyond our personal experiences. So things we learn about through television, world, magazines, and newspapers. So this is also events in history that you can relate to the text. All right. So it looks like we are done with our bingo. Hopefully you guys got a bingo or you filled your whole board. Great job following along. I am going to go back and review one last time before we finish because this is so important to remember. So text to self. Something important that you can use when you're trying to figure out text to self is using the phrase, "It reminds me of the time." That way it can start you off on how to use text to self. Text to text. It reminds me of the book. So that's another way that you can start when using that connection. And text to world. This event was like the real event. So that is text, making connections to a text. So our objective today was I can make connections between text and ideas, comprehend what I read. I feel like we accomplished it really well today. What I highly recommend is if you want more practice, go and read some stories and connect to them. Do some text selves, text to text, text to world. And if you feel like you got it down, try it with chapter books. It could be a little bit more difficult and it can help you out with practice. So again, great job today, guys. I hope that you either got a bingo or filled the whole board and that you enjoyed today's lesson. I am going to go ahead and go. And thank you guys again so much. Bye.